Welcome to this special broadcast. My name is John Michael Chambers. Special broadcast with Mr. Juan O Savin. I just sat down with Juan here in beautiful Thailand, and I'm glad we were able to meet up and get this broadcast out to you. Juan, for those newly aboard, everyone else knows who Juan is, but those newly coming aboard, Juan has been serving this nation since the time of Ronald Reagan and is a major voice today, providing much needed intel and analysis in this war. He's very well connected, and I'll just leave it at that. His clandestine assignments and self imposed directives, many of which are unknown to the public, play a critical role in protecting this nation and its interests for decades. He's a good friend, a national treasure, and most valuable voice and resource here in our new media space. Now, Juan is also a published author who has written several books on topics related to the issues of our times and the deep state. Is one of his most well-known books, of course, is Kid by the Side of the Road. I encourage everyone to visit thejennifermack.com. Lots of great information there and some Juan-inspired material, thejennifermack.com. Thank you, Juan O Savin, for joining me here today from beautiful Bangkok.
Hey, good to talk to you there, John.
Good to see you. Beautiful lobby setting, very beautiful. Juan, there's a lot to unpack here. I want to, before we start unpacking, let's begin talking about you're going to cover, and you and your team at the Storm Summit coming at the Airhorn Hotel, September 10th through 13th. Stormsummit.us. Very quickly to get this out there, you can visit, folks, unauthorized.one. That's ONE, unauthorized.one. And then when you get there, click on events, and all the data for stormsummit.us will be there. Get out there, meet Juan and an incredible panel. Juan, what's this summit going to be about?
Well, of course, we're coming into the storm. We do have a couple of really critical things that we're going to be emphasizing. One of the things that might surprise many people is, of course, this occurs over 9/11, the anniversary, and 25th anniversary. And of course, why is that especially important? Because the frauds and theft, which President Trump enunciated in his address to the nation a little over 2 weeks ago, those frauds, overturning the 2020 election, stealing the 2020 election, and other elections before and since, could not have happened except that you had 9/11, which then led to the consolidation of all of our intelligence agencies under one roof at Homeland Security and destroyed much of the compartmentalization, which was a protective feature, and the Patriot Act and other things that allowed for centralization of so many of the functions within the country. Without that, you don't have as simple of a fraud system on U.S. elections. And so going back and looking at events around 9/11, who was really behind it, how it was led up to, and the aftermath, who was really involved in that, is still key. And so some of what we're going to present has never been presented in public ever before. And I've got Kurt Weldon coming. He was in line to be the head of the Armed Services Committee in the House, one of the most powerful functions of the House, U.S. House. And because he wanted to reopen the 9/11 investigations and wasn't satisfied with what had been released to the public, they targeted him, took him out over in Congress on a bunch of bullshit that never panned out. But once the deed was done and he was out, it didn't matter. That's all he cared about, because he was going to go back and revisit 9/11. We have the Able Danger team, those people that were involved in the investigations coming into 9/11 and their latest pieces of information. So I'll be doing a presentation, also Architects of Illusion, and that we're currently in. And we've got plenty of other people. We're re-showing Dark Horse. We premiered the movie at the Fraud Fighter Summit. We're going to premiere it again, which is the latest Jim Caviezel movie. And the reason that's important there is the frauds and theft of the Brazilian elections and subsequent jailing of the president of Brazil, Javier Bolsonaro. And his son Eduardo will be with us at the event. A couple of other people, have a number of people coming up from Brazil for the event. Subsequent to us showing the movie and all the blogging like that, you had 250,000 people out on the streets in Brazil protesting that the president's in prison. And then, and that's not over. Uh, the government's very stressed about the light being shown on what's going on down there. And by the way, there's a component goes all the way over into Cuba. You haven't been watching what's going on in Cuba, as I've told audiences for quite some time. Even last year, I let known that I have people translating critical stuff from the intelligence services out of Brazil, and intend to do something here shortly related to that. But Brazil, I mean, Cuba, I apologize, intelligence agencies out of Cuba and certain personnel. Cuba is in very dire shape. They had a nationwide blackout that they got partially back on just in the last 2 days and then back off again. They're coming apart from the seams internally, but beyond just coming apart at the seams, they're unraveling. It's one thing to sew up something on a seam that's come unglued. It's another thing as the garment becomes unraveled, and that's not easily put back together again. We need to be prepared to assist and step in when invited to help the Cuban people. And of course, Cuba falling out of control of China, Russia's really not in control there much anymore at all. But also these South American regimes. Remember, going after Venezuela was going after Cuba. Mm-hmm. It was Cuban guards that were protecting Maduro and that whole crowd. So Cuba is going to play more and more in here, in part because we're also going to be doing something unimaginable to most people at this point in time at Guantanamo. They're on the island next door. And we don't want, frankly, we just don't want people overlooking that close from China or anyplace else. So having Cuba reset right during this timeline is useful and important. And of course, we have a huge number of Cuban families and people that live here in the United States in the aftermath of that are more than willing to be part of helping to get the island back under control and functional. And they're literally starving to death in a place where food and resources are so plentiful and reasonable. It's insane that they're in as bad a shape as they are. But it's the model of communism. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that said, I also I'll be in South Korea for a few days here, and the South Korean people have suffered a similar attack to what happened in Brazil and what was intended for President Trump. Their president is in prison right now, and the interim president of South Korea, who was the I keep wanting to say Secretary of State. He was the head of the Senate there, but he and a lot of the staff there, I'll get a chance to meet with them, but they're coming over to the U.S. for our Storm Fighter Summit also, our Storm Summit. And so that'll be kind of fun too. And then we have a number of people that, uh, James O'Keefe is coming to do a major presentation during the summit. Looking forward to that. Steve Bannon's going to be there in person and do a presentation. Roseanne Barr is coming out. We're going to show the first two episodes of her new TV series that is like a 10-part series. And this audience will get to see that exclusively. It's not shown anywhere else, not available anywhere else. It's the only time probably till it gets released for distribution. And so that's very funny. Matt and I, my chief of staff, have seen the trailer. Um, and there's a couple of lines in there that just every time we call, he'll say the one line, I'll say the other. And it's just hysterical from that trailer. It's just Roseanne has put something together that, it takes everything that she's done to this point in time to yet another level. And probably it becomes a keynote for comedy in the way that we're going to see things presented for quite some time. So I'm excited about that. She's been such a great friend and ally. And uh, so we have a couple other surprises that in putting together the run of show, the problem isn't getting, great quality people. It's like having to tell really, really, really important guests, I gotta, hone you down to, a modest level. They could do 2 hours, and I got to keep them in there, half hour or something. I've got one guest that we just locked in yesterday who has some critical, critical, critical information that affects the West Coast, really affects the whole country when you understand it. But that presentation there is, nobody's hearing it out there for the most part, almost unheard within the Patriot community. And you have to understand the impact on um, how the country functions energy wise based on what he's going to share. So, and by the way, just let me clear something up. I've mentioned that we've probably just come through. If you tried to equate things to numbers, it's squishy a little bit, but just to get a mental picture, we've been here in this midsummer period in what I would call, say, a Category 2 storm. It's a bit blustery. The clouds are getting darker. Fauci's testimony was far more important and impactful than most people realize because it was the pivot point to understand that the illusions that are being foisted upon America have been very effectively foisted and out into the world are beginning to be shattered and dissipated, and the truth is getting a chance to break through. That said, if we've pivoted, we're in some kind of a 3 category. That doesn't go 3-7. Really, the most difficult parts of the storm aren't anywhere this year. The people that are saying stuff like that are misunderstanding it. No, it's going to continue to build. The worst of the storm is sometime next year. And we would move all the way up to a 6. And briefly, not for years and years, but for a tiny window, I think it will peak out in the 7 range because some things are so, look, I've said it's a near death experience for America. It is a Cuban Missile Crisis type event, which Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, used exactly word for word, precisely the same terminology as I did months later from the presidential compound. And there was kind of a reason for that. But the short version is that's yet to come. And it's not really during this calendar year for a bunch of reasons. And even, there's been people very, very highly critical of the president, that he hasn't acted fast enough, decisively enough, should have gone straight to Insurrection Act and thrown people in prison before the midterms here and exercise his power as commander in chief. And I just had again this conversation this morning with somebody who pretty much everybody in this audience would know. And I said, you got to take a breath and understand why the president um, and the people around him haven't pulled the trigger the way that you think that they should. And it's not because they're not patriots or they're exposing us to all sorts of danger, etc. If you're running a race car, if you're uh, bringing an aircraft out, you start it, you go do a ground walk around the aircraft, ground check. Uh, you have a checklist, and then you go into the aircraft. You set things in a certain configuration. You start the engine. As you're idling the engine, you're bringing it up to temperature, lots of different areas so that all the parts warm up, checking your exhaust gas temperature, things like that, manifold pressure. You taxi over to a position to move on to the flight line. And even there, you continue to have to verify in your checklist all sorts of things that ensure that you're ready to take off, even flap positions, things like that. Um, Once you get through all of that checklist, you can move on to the flight line and final check, bring the throttle up and go. If you just race off of a parking position out on the flight line and go, it's easy to miss stuff, but it's also the parts don't warm up evenly and come up to operating temperatures. That's how you blow a gasket. That's how you crack a manifold. And now you're in serious trouble. Uh, there's a process that you have to go through. The country has had to come to grips and is still coming to grips with the truth of the election frauds and how it flipped 2020. We're only now beginning to reach numbers broad enough that enough of the population understands the nature of the threat, how it could even have happened, that we're ready to come up to speed. But once you're out there, you move onto the flight line, everything's uh, at operating temperatures, and you hit the gas. Go down, reach an airspeed that's appropriate, and lift off, rotate. Um, there's certain things that are in there where we're going, but you can gain ground, altitude, speed very quickly, uh, even though it may have taken long minutes to get to the point where you could actually go. Um, uh, what's about to happen here in the country is going to be so stunning, so previously unheard of. And yet it's this moment that we've had to collect ourselves and get ready has been a hypercritical. And if you at least have that in your mind, I would be very slow to tell the president that he doesn't know what he's doing or he's not getting told stuff.
Kidding.
He is a master at feigning ignorance at critical times. Absolutely a master. Why? Because he's a card shark. Face it, he's a card shark. He's not going to give away his intentions or next move easily. And he's gone to extremes to demonstrate that even the people around him don't fully know exactly his next move because he wants to be in charge and not have somebody else running him. So I just had a conversation with somebody else who's been in the room with him numerous times and uh, said the same thing. He said, it's just like he said, he is so good at concealing where I know that he knows certain things and he doesn't telegraph to the other people, uh, even people close to him, because he's not going to let somebody else anticipate or predict exactly his next move. Uh, that's just the way it is. Get over it. We're in actually, I think, excellent shape at this exact moment in time. We don't do pre-crime in America. So the crimes that are occurring against the American people within the election system, through the primaries, etc., um, have been doubled down on. And those people that are participating that think they've got a shot still at winning will have a very rough day or two ahead. That said, even at the point that the president does what I've said he is likely to do, pause the midterms just before the midterms. Some other people have come forward and said they think it could happen as early as late August, Steve Bannon being one of them. I don't think so. We're not, we need every inch of runway to get this big bird off. And so I don't think it happens literally till the last week of October. We're going to use every inch of the runway. We're already, you know, in reality past the point of no return because the primaries have all happened. You're not going to fix this with the SAVE Act or a executive order or something like that. It's already been proven that that can't do it. So with that in mind, probably at the last possible second, he's going to come in, do something remarkable, and then we go into this next phase, which includes for the whole world. Much of the world is waiting, standing by for what's about to happen next because the election thefts and frauds are worldwide. And the pushback to overturn what's occurred will also have to be worldwide, but starting in America. And we get our situation under control and go out and help other countries, brothers sharpening brothers, iron sharpens iron, to get to honest elections, which is what Trump's wants as a core feature of his legacy, and then honest money. And both of them do go together because part of the reason for stealing all these elections is so they can control money flow and profits around the world. And we're going to attack that too. And it won't be in the ways that our enemies have planned. It will be in ways that serve American interests and our friends across the world. And some of the things are going to shock this audience as it happens. But here's the important feature. It's just like people saying, we're going in category 7. Don't travel, don't do anything. It's the end of the world. Bullshit. It's a process. And in fact, you don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. They're coming at us, so they're coming. Okay, well, if you want to be effective, don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. They don't even know we're here. But, okay, hold your peace. Hang tight. The moment's coming. Think of, again, Moses is out there. There's people screaming at him from the audience, from the crowd around him. Why did you bring us out here? Pharaoh and his army are coming at us. Look at that cloud. It's a great cloud of dust coming at us from all the chariots. We're all going to die. There weren't enough graves in Egypt. You brought us out here to die? And Moses says, hold your peace. Yeah. The people that are coming after you after today, you'll never see them again. God will provide a way. The river, river hadn't even been parted yet, okay, for them to go over onto the other side in safety. Moses had to turn, walk over to the river bank, raise the staff, and then the water parted like a wall on either side, and they crossed on dry ground. What's interesting about that, by the way, just so everybody here knows, a little detail. It says they went across on dry ground. They went across on foot with all the people. And as they're crossing and just getting across the river, the chariots are bearing down on them. They come racing into the riverbed, and the wall of water is still held up on either side. As they got out into the middle of the river, they started to get into a problem because their chariot wheels went down through the top surface, which was dry, for the children of Israel as they crossed, but it cut down through that upper layer and began to cake up with mud. Their chariots got bogged down with mud as they came across. Then as the last of the children, because these things are bearing down and they're coming on them, but they get slower and slower and slower and slower because they get bogged down in the mud. When the whole of the Egyptian army, not part of them, were fully in the river and caked down with mud on their wheels and couldn't get out of the way, and the people of Israel had just crossed into safety, the wall came tumbling down, just like happened at the Jericho. But here was the wall of water on both sides, inundated them and drowned the whole Egyptian army. Something similar is about to happen here. Those people that have been coming after us through election frauds and chasing us down right down to the last second, we have the data. We know how they're doing it, how they've been doing it. We have the people that have a good grip on it. We have way more intricate detail worldwide than a lot of these people understand. And as we get down to our midterm election day, I believe that the plan is to pause it and then start the process of arrests, starting with the Russia stuff and then moving through other areas. And by the way, I mentioned to you, John, when you were here with me the other day, the latest data that I've been monitoring was provided to me by friends concerning all the federal district courts around the country, 56 of them, because you have territories besides the states, just a very small number shy of 500,000 sealed indictments when you add it up between all the courts over the last several years that are still active. Just shy of 500,000 sealed indictments sitting, waiting to be served. This is many, many, many times the normal number. This is unbelievable behind the scenes. Now, the sealed indictments can be for all sorts of things. It could be immigration frauds. It could be election stuff, gangs, whatever. Each indictment isn't just one person. The indictments can have between 1 and 99 named persons within a single sealed indictment. And these have been heard by grand juries. So this is an astounding number. This isn't just some rogue prosecutor or group of prosecutors doing stuff, some secret, star chamber situation. This is all relatively in the open by grand juries, which meet in secret as far as their actual proceedings, who have handed down these indictments because of the fact that there's ongoing investigations. Just like if you had a drug or criminal cartel of some sort doing something, and you maybe get one guy on murder, but you don't want to spill the beans before you get other people that may have been involved. You seal that indictment while you're continuing to bring the charges against the rest to fill it out without spilling the beans. Well, to have almost 500,000 sealed indictments, if you had, let's say they're not 99 in every indictment, but maybe an average of 10, well, that would be 5 million people under indictment. Is that immigration fraud and things like that? If you had the full 99, every single one, that'd be 50 million people, under indictment. So there's some wild aspect to this. Is it some small portion? Look, if it was, half of the 5 million, if it was a quarter of the 5 million, you're still talking about 1.5 or 1.25 million people on those indictments. If you were just having 2 or 3 people in indictment, so 4 people in indictment, it's an astounding number no matter what, and that still hasn't been served. They're active. They're not there for no reason. They're holding till the critical moment when they can be served in mass. And we are, by the way, if there's people here in the audience, we have a lot of patriot type people who, unfortunately, they're here in the United States and got here for any number of reasons without coming through the front door. And they're not the most horrible people in the world. Uh, but if you get picked up and deported, the way the law is, and that's not going to change under Trump or anybody probably that follows close after him, if you're deported, you cannot come back to America ever again. Can't come visit your kids or friends, relatives, anything. Uh, if you self-deport, then you can go through the process to come back. And so hard as it may be, in the environment that's existing now and about to get radically more intense over the next 6 months, if you want to be able to preserve that option for yourself, your kids, whatever, you have to self-deport. Get out of the way, immediately file to come back. And as I've mentioned to some other audience, I don't think I did it with you, John, necessarily, but I had somebody that had done work for me for a very long time. And last year, actually just tail end of 2024 after Trump won, he calls me, I got to talk to you. You got to come by. He was working on one of my hot rods, two of my hot rods. And he says, I'm not going to be able to finish this one. This one I'll finish for you, but here's the problem. Um, I, I've never said it, but I'm here illegally. And he's had kids there. He's got kids in college that he brought over with him and his wife. Super guy, good friend. But he'd been buying off a huge farm ranch operation. He had a couple relatives working there down in Mexico. And he's like, what do you think I should do? I says, I'd get my ass out of here, gather the family, go down to the farm, and then reapply to come back before you get picked up. And there was a particular reason why I felt he would be picked up early. So he did. He went back down to Mexico. He had a house he was buying. They sold that off. Um, uh, did other stuff to get out of a lease on a shop he was doing. I helped him on several fronts and went back to Mexico. His kids are already back. He did that last spring. His kids are already back legally and going to college, continuing their college education. And he's got applications in to come back. He did say, however, that, things have quieted down massively, even over the last year in Mexico, because the cartel activity is way down. And he feels safer now down there than he was feeling up here. So, interesting things. And then there was a new development just in the last couple of days. He let me know that there had been a question between him and a different relative who didn't feel the need, urgency. That relative just got picked up the other day, he and his wife and a kid, and got deported. And now they're crying the blues, wanting to come over and stay at his place. And, they never come back. They got deported, got picked up and deported. Uh, Now's the time to get real. And if you're here and you're not here legally and you're, part of the patriot community, a lot of these people are great folks. Um, Step on it, get the hell out of the way, and then start the process to get back. We're going to need uh, people back in America as we go through this process because we're reindustrializing the country. And we're going to enjoy having many of these people back. We're just going to weed out the criminal component so that the people that come back are actually safe for the rest of us. We're not letting the gang members back. We're not letting the rapists and murderers and similar back into the country. So come on back through the front door. It'll be a little bit of time, but you'll make it, and you'll be received with open arms because we will enjoy to have productive people back working with us as we rebuild America from the inside out. So anyway, sorry, I wanted to just kind of get those little details in there while I could. So.
Well, thank you very much, Juan. Quick comment, and then I've got some pointed questions concerning Fauci. The 500,000 sealed indictments with anywhere from 1 to 100 other individuals that may very well materialize as they get unsealed. I think it would be a fair statement to say that the processing of all of these individuals is something that perhaps will go on for a couple of 3 years. Would that be a fair statement?
Um, well, the reality is that there's so much here that we will probably be even still involved in war crimes trials 10 years from now.
Okay.
There's a lot of work that has to be done here. And then again, like I just mentioned, we're nowhere close to the worst of the storm.
Mhm.
The uh, I've called it a near-death experience for America, Cuban Missile Crisis type events in there. Also, we've got one of the most critical things in here is the reset of the cell phone system, which has been weaponized nationwide. So we have a lot of technical things that can't be rushed through, and a checklist that has to be gone through to make America safe again, and to see justice served, even in doing a military component, which is absolutely the only way uh, to get America's election system and economy back on track correctly. We're in a wartime environment, even if you don't know it. We're already in a national security emergency that has been declared, but most people have failed to recognize that it's still ongoing, back to the initiation of it on March 13th of 2020 by President Trump with the national COVID emergency. And as I've said in numerous presentations, that most people here in the audience have already heard me say it, COVID was about elections. It wasn't about the SARS-2 common cold flu. It was about creating a um, context within which you could force that the majority of the population goes to mail-in ballots, drop boxes, which violate chain of custody, um, and moving us towards a all digital vote that you do on your cell phone. That we would never have gotten control of our elections ever again. Once that got in place, you wouldn't have a legal context in which to own and control your elections. It really was, in Star Trek terms, a Tholian web of containment being sewn around the whole world. That, in order to once completed, we wouldn't be able to break out of with the technology individually that we have. So this is that moment where we break out of this built-in web and then take control of the situation once again, on our elections, on our money, what constitutes money, our economics, and one that's not very widely seen. What makes the world go round? Energy. And this attack on America to choke us down to where we didn't have access to our energy supplies and could function, including this reindustrialization of America, this coordinated attack on energy production and supply routes. That's one of the things we'll be covering at the summit here in September, and the fight back. You may have seen, I think I showed it to you yesterday or day before when you were here. The president issued a order that increased the oil production off the coast of California by 550% under the Defense Production Act, and ordered that oil go into the um, pipeline system, which takes it through El Segundo, California, the refinery there, to keep enough um, um, energy, refined energy, oils, fuel, gas, uh, for military purposes. But it also assists on the civilian side. Now, that's was a very partial thing, and there's more to come. Northern California is in an extremely dire situation, and most Californians really don't understand it. The rest of the West Coast really doesn't understand it. But uh, the shutdown of the major refineries in California is being because of regulations the California government has put into place that are just, bizarre, uncalled for. Uh, they're looking at shutting down, essentially half the refinery capacity in California. You're facing a situation where, in a matter of months, and um, this isn't hyperbole. If you remember, you're just old enough to remember, a little bit of a kid, but just barely old enough to remember probably when we had the gas lines and then went to odd, even days to get gas back in the mid 70s. And I remember hearing the Saudi oil minister when everybody was going after the Saudis on oil production and blah, blah, blah. And he says, the problem in America isn't an oil production problem. Quit looking at us and the pricing like that. It's a refinery problem. You're not refining enough gas for the public. And, that's your real crisis. And that was totally true. We're coming into a refinery crisis across the country. And when you push refineries and don't do scheduled maintenance for various reasons, keep them going, uh, put too much pressure on any individual refinery, that's when you get huge fires. They're talking about taking out half the refining capacity in California. The remaining refineries, to keep up with demand, they start bypassing checkpoints for maintenance and service, or they themselves have to shut down with no backup capacity to fill the gap. It affects the whole country. Right now, a couple of the airlines are taking jet fuel from the East Coast and bringing it to the West Coast just to keep enough jet fuel to keep their aircraft operating from LAX and other airports because the refinery capacity is being shut down. This is a monstrously huge crisis that affects the whole country because as you bleed off those stocks off the East Coast, now they're in a more precarious situation just because of California uh, has gone out of their minds. So we'll be talking about that during the Storm Summit. But you could end up with $10 gas very easily in California, plus odd even days. Uh, you know, brace yourselves. There's stuff that can be done. The president, I think, has started to address it 2 days ago with the Defense Production Act being enforced on this. And I think there will be other layers to it. But for all the ranting and screaming that may come from it, this is a huge national security issue, especially as we come back into the reindustrialization of America. And for example, shutting down the Valero plant. These refineries are orders of magnitude more complicated and uh, uh, in some ways riskier even than a nuclear plant. There's certain things you do. We run refineries very well all over the world, just fine. But you don't just turn them on and off like a spigot. In fact, Valero's very close now to where once you've shut it down past a certain point, and they've been ordered essentially to shut down, you can't restart it. In fact, you could come back a year from now and say, well, we decided to go ahead and run Valero and let's go start it back up. You have lost the infrastructure, personnel and equipment wise. It won't be able to be restarted. You'll have to go start another plant somewhere else completely. It's a very complex operation, and the institutional knowledge, et cetera, the supply lines, the function, the personnel, you're not going to restart it. It's gone forever. This is a national tragedy. It's a regional tragedy and cannot be allowed to go forward. But the fight that's going to be involved can only be resolved at this point uh, with something from the president related to the Defense Production Act. And that needs to happen very, very quickly. So we'll be addressing that at the Storm Summit and let others weigh in on it as needed. So uh, let me take a pause, John. I've got a critical call that I've got to deal with here momentarily on something. Give me about 2, 3 minutes. I'll be right back with you.
You bet. Folks, we're listening to Juan O Savin, and we're listening because I'm not speaking while he speaks, and that's deliberate. I don't know if you've noticed and recognized a change. I certainly have. I've known Juan just about 7 years now, and I can see it. I'm sure many of you can. And that change, in my opinion, is, how do I say it? Let's just say he's further activated, for lack of a better term, because of where we are in this war. And the information that Juan just unloaded is extraordinary if you think about it. I haven't even gotten to my first question yet in my discussion with Juan. I've got 5 questions, but he's sort of addressed some of the issues that's on my docket, and I'll come back and clarify a few things for us. Folks, we're going to talk about Fauci's, which is the likely path to bring Fauci to justice. We'll break that down a bit. I've got a few questions about the midterm extension, um, because he basically shared a lot of that with me a few days ago while I was in that beautiful hotel you see one at there in Bangkok. And I'm just an hour flight from there. I'm back in my neck of the woods here in northern Thailand. But I pretty much know the answer to question number 2, but we're going to bring it out here on this episode. Also, I'd like to talk with Juan about the president's second term. I thought there was a third term or a fourth term. He's going to tell us why it's the second term and how President Trump actually resigned in 2020. And he's going to break that down for us and the likelihood of, or his views of how that's going to play out. We'll leave it at that. If time allows, and he'll be brief on this, I'd like to, I'm curious about off-world activity, even though it's not a front and center news story today with everything else that's going on. It is critically important down the line. That's why the president has released the tranches and continues to do so on UAPs and UFOs, etc. I'm going to ask him about Antarctica, a Golden Dome, its relation to aliens, and why the president is bringing this information to us today and what that might lead to. And then lastly, if time allows, Juan has talked about, you saw he opened up. There he is. Juan, we got you on camera there. And if he's back, I'll pipe down. I'll wait for Juan to speak. I've got no audio on you, Juan.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I'm just chatting with the audience. If you want to conclude what you were saying, if not, I'd like to pick it up with a question about Anthony Fauci.
Sure.
Yeah, let's go there. We got these things on the docket. We got a pardon, and then challenges of the pardon because of the Otto Penn presidency. And then we have a contempt of Congress potential charge from Rand Paul. My question to you is, which is the likely path to bringing Fauci to justice? And in Juan's crystal ball, how long will this charade play out before justice is served?
Well, let me say it this way, John. Um, as satisfying as it may be for many to bring some kind of swift justice in these matters, the reality is that we don't do lynchings in a just system here in America. And in fact, let's just talk strategy. When you're doing certain things within a legal realm, sometimes the correct action is to hold while you develop your case before you bring in your, pivotal star witness or something like that. Now, Fauci being questioned before Congress is pivotal, and it started to break this illusion for many, including many of the people that had at some point supported Fauci. The wizard has, the curtain's been pulled back.
Yes.
But there's still a lot more to be played out. That that just isn't quite yet understood. And so having him there dangling for a
Mm.
bit, allowing the spectacle to develop to, allow the diners to assemble, if you will, is not a wrong strategy because much of the country still, they view people within this audience as being, over exercised on things, over exuberant on many things. And while you've been vindicated in many ways, there's a long ways to go towards full, real vindication. I don't just want a feel good moment. I want justice done.
Yes.
And Fauci didn't do what he did in a vacuum. There are many, 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 many people uh, who operated with and benefited from the actions of Mr. Fauci. And more importantly, he was somebody's tool in their toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't there of his own volition to affect the vote. He was a tool in somebody's toolbox to be used to create a circumstance that could be used to affect the vote. COVID was about the vote system.
Mm-hmm.
Let there be no mistake about it. COVID was used to affect elections worldwide. When President Trump declared the national emergency regarding COVID, even he fully understood that the attack was aimed towards elections, not the virus. And along the way, these people, Fauci included, killed millions, injured tens of millions in permanent ways. I saw uh, a high profile person in his 30s died unexpectedly a couple days ago, and of a heart attack, supposedly. Now, granted, they were involved in very strenuous activities and things like that, but precisely what I was going out talking to the whole country about with an entourage of doctors and lawyers and sports people um, within the sports community. Uh, these were people that would suffer from this shot even more than otherwise healthy people might. And uh, that's been the case. I was mostly concerned with military age people and trying to make the case indirectly uh, that the military personnel can't and should not take the shot. And many didn't. Uh, uh, Even under incredible pressure. Um, but we couldn't go straight at the military only because that would have been interference in um, military operations, and that just was not an option, direct interference. So we did it indirectly. Now, all of that said, that's why there was a COVID emergency. And one other thing, well, didn't Trump know it was going to kill a lot of people? Yeah, actually, he did. He actually said in the late summer of 2020, he was about to make a decision that would cost a lot of lives, a lot. Um, what was that decision related to? Allowing the shot to come forward, warp speed, because the people behind the scenes, they had the antidote as far as they were concerned, the shot, if you will, which is no antidote, um, available, ready to go in 2015, long before as well, because the whole thing was a construct, it was a plan. Um, so he just forced them with warp speed to bring it forward sooner because they'd already committed that when we have a vaccine, then we can begin to open the country back up. So we forced them to open back up. Vaccine was out there. Everybody had information. You don't have to take the shot. Lots of argument. Careful who you listen to. You had to weigh it out yourself. Self-preservation. Well, but look, you're in Nazi occupied France. Operate accordingly. Don't trust anybody, including people that are around you, people you might know. You're in occupied territory. Operate accordingly. make decisions to save your life and decide, what you're hearing makes sense. Well, but Trump promoted the shot. Trump promoted the shot. Yeah, actually, if you look, what did he say when he got COVID? And he went over to Walter Reed with Melania, and they got the cure. Oh, it was hydroxychloroquine. Shot wasn't available yet. He was trying to give you information to save your life. You had to make the decision. You got cancer, you got some other thing. Do you really want to get this shot? You want to go see your grandkids for just a couple of days right now, or you want to be around for them when they're having their kids, and you have great grandkids. You have to make a choice. Who are you going to listen to? Some inconveniences were involved. We're in a wartime setting, even now. Get over it, figure it out, operate accordingly, and that's what's going on. We're about to see this whole thing escalate. We're up to temperature for the most part. Manifold temperature pressures are correct. We're going to move out onto the flight line and get the go signal, and we're going to be taking off here shortly. And it's going to be epic. Brace yourselves. But it's not going into a category 7. We're only at the election time. We're only in a category 4. In the interim, enjoy life. In fact, that's what we're going to do there in Vegas. We're going to hang out. We're going to have fun. Hear from an amazing group of speakers, and chance to rub shoulders with an amazing group of other patriots, and then move into some of these main events that continue to escalate through deep into next year.
Thank you, Juan, and thanks for the clarification on warp speed. And everyone should get out there to Las Vegas live, meet Juan and the incredible panel. We'll be streaming it live for those around the world that can't get there to get the message out. I want to move into the midterms. Quick question here. You've covered it a bit already, but a lot of new people coming aboard, as you stated before. Varying different degrees of people understanding what's really happened to this country with elections. Having said that, with the probable election delay, moving beyond November, in your crystal ball, is that a few weeks, a few months, a year? And why?
Well, the whole
Why?
point.
Why?
The whole point in pausing the election is because there's been election interference. That's what the president was talking about 2020, that China flipped our elections, interfered in elections, and successfully flipped it. Biden didn't win the election. Biden didn't get more votes than Obama. These frauds have been in place, electronic ballot, and even the propaganda. There was testimony from Google execs that just by changing the way the search engines access information within the Google system, Google alone could potentially flip 15 million votes according to their own internal analysis. That's just Google. We're coming into an AI world. Information's getting thrown all over the place. People go after shiny. They don't dig deeper than what somebody just said. Well, this is what happened. You got to believe this. And then other people come in and sift through it. But unfortunately, they come to it late. The election's already happened. The deed is done, the October surprise type stuff. So in this era that we're coming up into as a world, if you don't get elections reined in, election processes reined in now, this Tholian web of containment gets completed, and now you'll never get away from the globalista, the oligarchs, controlling who gets in power, how the money gets spent, how you're controlled and put under the thumb of some global cabal or groups of cabals, and thrown into war after war after war after war to bleed off your young people and their creativity. You're the cannon fodder, not their kids, and take over the world. We have to get the election processes reined back in, and then simultaneous, not separately, but just a half step behind, we go after the economic side. Honest elections, honest money. Those are themes that we'll have within our presentations here at the Storm Summit. And of course, let's go back to 9/11. 9/11, whether you grasp it completely now or not, was about its own role in controlling the election processes, the environment, the atmosphere of how you go about things, creating Homeland Security, which, hello, we had CISA over at Homeland Security, supposed to protect us on the digital vote frauds. They did nothing to protect us. In fact, everything they did helped to ensure that those thefts within the electronic side continued unabated. When we get into justice being served, many of those people are going to have to do some answering, just like Fauci did. It's going to be gruesome for them because China's all through this. This isn't just mere hyperbole by Trump about China interfering in the 2020 election and beyond. We haven't even look, I mentioned to you privately over the past couple of days, I think I took calls while you were there. What's happening right now, almost unseen, unknown across the country, a number of investigations have been moved to a different level concerning campaign finance and the origins of the funds going into the campaign finance for offices all through the country. Those investigations are getting ramped up pretty quickly, in part because you had private groups who did a tremendous amount of work looking at the usual suspects and some of the minor suspects around the country. Just one operation run totally privately in a major state that I've been aware of for the last couple of years. They've got like 30 binders identifying key people, key operations, focused around one of the largest counties in the country, and then out through the networks into and out of that location to adjoining operations within the state and other states and its flow of funds. As the investigators, multi-agency investigations have been put in place, literally several of them on the same day as the president presented to the country. They're looking at the origins and flow of campaign finance money. That's different than the vote specifically, because what does a campaign spend that money on primarily? Well, it's the propaganda to go with the candidate. It's the advertising. And where's the advertising done? Well, a huge percentage of it is in the mainstream media and the sub outlets that have agreements with those main, media that have the licensing. Why is that important? Because hearing the ad, even the way news stories are conducted and interviews are scheduled, gives certain people weight and momentum that other people can't compete with. In fact, in one of the specific things that we've been working on over the last several days, I think lawsuit's going to be filed tomorrow on one specific matter. Other candidates within this state said, if we don't take this money, we'd never get a chance to be in office. Oh, really? So you have to take foreign money to have a prayer of winning the election because you want to do good things. But if you don't take that foreign money, you don't stand a chance, and it would go to somebody else. So you do something wrong because that way at least you get into power. And you save your family and blah, blah, blah. The way I couched this to the people involved, I said, so in other words, in order to get 2 U.S. senators in a low population state, Uh, you're willing to take this outside money, which over 50% of the money, well over that in this one particular race, came from outside the state. And most of that money that came from outside the state actually has foreign sources going back to China, specifically China. So literally, China, Chinese operatives funnel money into campaigns locations here in the States and then flow it out to specific campaigns they want, of which in this particular state's case, till a suit's filed, I don't want to say, um, as the candidate said when we talked to him privately about this, well, I wouldn't even be able to get into office. I didn't take this foreign money. So it's, to me, it's the equivalent of not just prostitution. The candidates aren't just prostitutes in this case. The candidates are forced into prostitution. Um, in essence, you have to take this money, you have to prostitute yourself in order to stay alive, stay viable, or you're out. You're out in the street, starved to death. So that's different than just being a prostitute. And that forced prostitution, to even have a chance to be out in the street and survive, you got to perform. In this state's case, and then multiple states that are cheap dates, they're going after the senators, all the other positions, governor, secretary of state, attorney general, and down the list, other locations, all the way down to city council and dog catcher, are gravy. The key thing is to get a couple of senators. If you can get the money in the right places, get the right forced prostitution in the right places, to get a couple of senators in a half dozen states, you affect the U.S. senators, you affect the whole country. And then the governors, secretaries of state, attorney generals are like pieces on the chessboard to protect those players. But you got the senators, which blocks the money, which is the most important, or allows the money to flow to chosen people, locations, etc. The U.S. Senate's the key. And so uh, uh, there was an active campaign run precisely out of China. They gamed it out. They looked at the big board. They said the best way to control America is to control the senators. And if you control the campaigns for U.S. Senate and the money going to the right people to get those people in office, the easiest place to do it is low population states out in the West. And then you affect the way that House and the Senate operate. Remember, the SAVE Act was passed over at the House several times. At the U.S. Senate, for all sorts of bizarre reasons, the Senate just wouldn't pass it. It's inexplicable. This happens over and over and over again on numerous subjects. So the Senate's really the key. Controlling a half dozen low population states because it's less expensive. The cost for advertising, the candidates, everything else is much simpler, clearer, easier. And to propagandize a small percentage of the population, you're going to get everything. We're going to take care of you. We bring home the bacon every day. Cheap date, forced prostitution. And, when you get into that realm with the various crime families, especially the Asian crime families, the skill sets to force prostitution amongst women is very well refined art. And that's what's happened in these Western states that are low population. And so we have to go back against that. In fact, you'll see some of the pushback beginning even over the next several days with things going on there, which ultimately goes to campaign finance. The other foot that really hasn't fallen thus far with what the president presented concerning the attack on elections through the vote and the vote machines and the false ballots um, now goes to the campaign financing. And by the way, Singapore is deeply involved. Players out of Singapore are deeply involved in this. When we looked at the fake paper ballots that came into the country, they came through Singapore first, and then went to the West Coast up to Vancouver, BC, and then down to Tacoma, Washington. They came in on the East Coast through Baltimore, and but they came from China to Singapore first. When we look at other of the operations, including the financial, Singapore was a key choke point before it went out to other operations like FTX, this falsehood down there in the Silicon Valley that was a pass-through for election finance fraud and money laundering. So this is going to be a developing story that'll develop very quickly. It won't be years to develop. It'll be over the next couple of months and in court filings and like that. So, we're moving from, where people, well, why isn't this being done? Why isn't that being done? How come they're not operating quicker? How come the president this and that and the other thing? Deep breaths. Hold your peace. We're moments from these next triggers beginning to get hit. And anybody wants to say, oh, yeah, we've heard that before. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, okay. Well, you AIs that are saying that, you won't have long to wait. The midterms are a specific date. We're literally just long weeks away from that. Watch and see. Then you can criticize all you want. See if I'm not right. So anyway, hope that answers the question. I don't even know where you were on the question.
That's okay. Thanks, Juan.
Wind me up and let me go. So anyway,
Well,
sorry about that.
that's why you're here. We want to hear what you know and your analysis. I'll patch it together at the end right now. Then I want to move on to President Trump's second, third, or fourth term. But before we go there, would it be a fair summarization, Juan, to state in part that those previously elected that have made their ways to the ballot were done perhaps in a fraudulent manner? We don't have our voter rolls in order, even though the president sort of requested of all the counties to do so. We don't have proper protocols in place to conduct free and fair elections, and therefore they're going to be suspended, delayed for a period of time. Would you say 3 to 6 months or 9 months to a year? What's your best guess?
Well, I guess that was the question you had.
Yeah, it's okay.
Before I went off on my rant here a moment
No
ago.
problem.
It wasn't an executive request. It was an executive order. The president issued his 107th executive order March 25th of 2025 at 1:07 in the afternoon signed. And that ordered that the county clerks around the country, under the supervision of the Secretary of States and governors of each of the states, would clean up their voter rolls, duplicate voters, dead voters, people that aren't authorized to vote because they aren't U.S. citizens, etc. That they clean up those voter rolls, and they had 180 days to do so. By 25 of September 2025, how many counties around the country had successfully cleaned up their voter rolls? 0. They would make statements, oh, well, we use ERIC, which is to look at legitimate voters versus people that aren't supposed to be there. Questionable operation at the very least. But nothing was changed of any substance at all compared to 2022 or 2020. Okay, the voter rolls are still corrupted. You're not going to get to an honest election. Then you've already held the primaries and sealed in who the candidates are in many places. So you're not actually going to have an honest election because you haven't even had an honest primary. You could do a perfect election at this point in time, November 3rd, 2026, and it would still be a fraudulent election because the people that got on the voter, the ballots, got there through election fraud and mischief in many cases. And it doesn't have to be every election in the country. It only has to be certain places. And it still violates the civil rights of people on the other side of the country. Because if you have, for example, a state or a couple different states, handful of states who are operating fraudulently to get, let's say, U.S. senators into the U.S. Senate through election mischief and fraud. then they can gum up the works of the whole country with just a tiny handful of senators from a couple of states. And now your senators that you brought in from your state are nullified. Okay. You got 100 plus senators, and then you have, uh, a certain percentage are always going to vote, one way or with the current administration centric. You throw a half dozen, uh, oddballs in there, you throw off the balance, you can't get anything through. You gum up the works. And of course, the spending happens on the Senate side. The proposed spending happens on the House side. And then it has to be approved on the Senate side. So just like what happened with the House with the SAVE Act, got vote, 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 positive, get to the Senate, not happening. So uh, now you have uh, a pause. Let's say I'm right, and that the president decides to pause the midterms. And a number of fairly significant folks have come forward and agreed with me that the president's going to pause the midterms. Uh, it's conceivable that he would wait to act before they take office at the first part of January of 2027. But I don't think that's going to be the case. But it would be for cause because of the information within the elections. But I think, uh, and anybody that thinks they know exactly what the president's going to do is full of shit because he's not telegraphing precisely his next moves. He's preparing you that something radical is about to happen, but he's not telegraphing that. A couple of the voices that are significant and actually talk to the president pretty regularly, I mean, once or more a week, have said they believe that the president's going to pause the election sometime late August. Uh, I would say that that's personally highly unlikely. Have lots of love for the people that are saying that. Got it. Good guys. I think when you look at what's going on, that from their standpoint, because that would be the easiest for the country. It'd give us the most time to prepare ourselves for how we're going to get this under control, et cetera. No, he's going to let them continue to commit the crimes and, in fact, even get the early voting started. I don't think he stops it till the tail end of October 2026 at the last minute. Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. Um, is that open to discussion? Absolutely, because nobody knows with precision exactly what's going to happen outside of a very tight circle around the president and the president himself. So take a deep breath. Um, uh, Logistically, I think the setup is aimed around a late October pause. Could be all the way up to when people take office, although I personally think that's highly unlikely for a lot of logistical reasons, but we don't know. Um, when that happens, uh, if you say the objective is to right the wrongs that would happen if you had the election on time, what wrong is already in place? The election's already fixed. You can't fix the November 3rd elections because it's already fixed. You've already got people on the ballot through fraudulent primaries that aren't the will of the people, through ballot fraud and election techniques fraud that they're on the ballot for this fall. If you had an election on time, you just seal the deal. Even if you only paused, let's say, for 3 months and then went forward and got a perfect election, you would do it with the existing candidates that made it through to the general election right now. You wouldn't be taking out the primary stuff. So the reality is that doesn't address the underlying condition that we're already in. Um, it's much more fundamental in what's wrong. And those fundamental things, the way the election is conducted, the voter rolls, which are corrupted and haven't been fixed so far, couldn't get fixed in 180 days. Well, they're going to fix them in 180 days after he pauses the election? Probably not. So my attitude on this whole thing is, and there is nobody on the outside of the specific plan that knows with precision
Mhm.
exactly what's intended. But when you game this out, you don't have to be
That's right.
that much of a rocket scientist to understand. A lot of the people that are on the ballot currently, in the course of the pause and arrests related to some of the other subject matter and heading for election integrity issues,
Mhm.
are going to shuffle the deck on the entire ballot as it exists or will exist by the time we get to October. In which case, uh, you have to allow another opportunity for people to decide who may not have wanted to run for office because they knew it was just a shit show, that may think again, well, maybe I will run this time. So you have to have room for them to do the mental evaluation. You have to allow that a number of the candidates may be removed from contention or think again, do they really want to run for office? And some of them that got blocked out by the frauds to date would go for it again. So when that happens, they've got to have a fair shake at getting a little money, running a fair campaign, going through the primary process, and then getting on the general ballot and have it run again. Could you do all of that plus the necessary arrests and reset of the systems in fundamental ways, moving away from the machines and going to a hand count paper ballot counted where cast? We're not putting the ballots in the trunk of the police car, not having the firemen carry it in their boot to the election counting center. Counted where cast. Nothing leaves the building where you're casting your vote. It's all under constant surveillance, and then do a count and uh, 1 day uh, election uh, with very, 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 very thin opportunities to vote remotely for very well uh, um, documented reasons, the people that have to vote remotely, and allowing the military's vote to be cast remotely and brought in play in a timely manner. There's a number of logistical things that have to be worked through, which can be done, but they aren't in place right now. So with all of that in mind, could you push back the elections 1 year? That's probably at least realistic. In reality, though, I don't think it'll be a year. There's always been in place a undercurrent of moving the elections to the spring and not the fall. The date we use in the fall right now, Farmer's Almanac and other things, that's the date that is what they call the slaughter day, when you would kill animals that you intend to keep the meat, preserve it for use through the winter into the next year, that you don't want to keep alive till the next year to continue to breed, grow, etc. So, and you don't want to have to feed them through the hard winter. So the slaughter day is that day you take the harvest and begin setting things aside. Why would we want to do our elections on what amounts to kind of a cultish almost date? We want to move them to a different time of the year. And I think that could be part of what's in play here. So, would we hold the paused election like we just pick up right exactly where we left off? No, because you got to correct the problems from the primaries. So, you need more months. Do we do a compressed opportunity to get on the ballot, run a campaign, get in the vote, get through the primary process, get on the general ballot? Yeah, could very well be the case. Might actually be healthy. Um, could you hold those elections in a year? I think you could. Is that the ideal time? Or with everything in play, would it be better to hold it back, say, a year and a half? Uh, I think that personally, that would be better. A year and a quarter, now you're in the dead of winter, hurts certain parts of the country. I don't think that's fair. So I think there's some discussion, trade offs, everything else about when that could happen. You may have to run some special elections because certain people are going to get taken out of office within the criminal um, arrest complaints, etc. Or they may want to step out of office because they know what's coming. So that could be in play. And there's other stuff in play. Brunson case is DOA right now. It's sitting on the shelf. Could that be revitalized? We're actually in the process of something that could put it right back front and center, but hasn't yet. Nobody should get ahead of the game. Don't be skipping around, get skippy on us as though it's already done, because it isn't. Uh, don't tell me what's going on it. I know as much as anybody, and it's not being acted upon in any way, shape, or form. So cut the bullshit. Uh, but we do think that there is a valid angle that revives that relatively quickly. Is it in play? Not quite yet, but we're close. We'll see what happens. Um, so my personal best guess, once we pause, it's a year and a half. The date of the pause, I think it's that last week of October. I'm on record saying that. Could it be sooner? Absolutely. Could it be later? Yes. Um, how sure am I that we're going to see a pause related to the implementation of whatever happens on the midterms 2026? I'm in the 99.99999 percentile. Uh, and for cause, it's not just an arbitrary, educated guess completely. Uh, there's some questions on the timing, and the president, his team behind him, within the military component, are not telegraphing with precision exactly what they're going to do. So take a breath. We're all in this together. Is the storm going to category 7 in the next month? No. Is it going to category 7 in the next 3 months? No. You might think it is when he pauses the election, but we're not to the worst of it because there's other things in play globally, including overturning elections for half the peoples on planet Earth who have people in power over them who are not the will of the people because of election fraud. This is a much bigger deal than just the United States.
Thank you very much, Juan. Quick follow-up, and I want to take us into another topic, similar. But folks, category 3 to 7, you have all that we just heard about the delay, the pause in elections, and what will need to take place to restore that. And you've got all that happening among other battles we're fighting, and that comprises your 3 to 7 in the category 7 in 2027. Juan, I want to ask you about President Trump. We discussed this. I'd like you to bring it to the forefront on this broadcast right now. In 2016, we had a victory. In 2020, we had our election stolen, but you'll comment on that. Commander-in-Chief operating in part out of Mar-a-Lago. We have 2024 victory, and now the president's messaging 2028. What's happening with that messaging, 2028? And is President Trump a second, third, or fourth term? Should he run again? Which would it be, and why?
Well, of course, I've passed around a lot. And by the way, credit where credit's due. The person that really pointed this out the most effectively first, I was aware of it, but hadn't really pressed hard. Professor Clements made a big deal, a couple of presentations all the way back to last February uh, at the bond conference that I did, which was all private, was not public, down there in Nevada. I had about 100 of the top people in the country on some of these issues come in, and we had a conclave concerning this. But he pointed out this meme, which President Trump showed, I think, literally at every single rally that he did, showing that the immigration crisis reached its lowest point of illegals coming into the country in that mid to late March period of 2020. It also, in the lower right-hand corner, it says that President Trump's lowest approval rating was also in this time. Um, but in the lower right-hand corner, something bizarre. It says President or that Trump resigns the presidency, and it has an arrow that goes up to exactly that area there at the tail end of March of 2020. Um, Trump resigns the presidency. What's that about? Trump resigns the presidency, really? And yet he went all the way to January 20th, 2021 as president. So pretty wild to say that, he's not operating as a president unless you look at it in the light that I've described to your listeners. President Trump, March 13th of 2020, declared the COVID emergency as a national emergency. Then on 3/15, 2 days later, he went and did the walkthrough at Cheyenne Mountain. And when he got to the end and the media pool was all, standing there, and he came out and addressed them. And in the course of his comments, he says, I've out of an abundance of caution, because we may have just been attacked related to COVID. We may already be at war and not realize it yet. So, out of an abundance of caution, I'm sealing up the mountain. Well, of course, the contention is that people could get COVID that work in the facility and then die off. And now we don't have the personnel to run our national security system, nuclear and beyond, uh, in that place because everybody's coming down with COVID inside the facility and dying off. So we had to seal them off for their protection and for the protection of the country. But in reality, it was an attack on elections. So at that moment, he takes off his president of the United States hat, which is like the chief of police of the country, and puts on his commander in chief hat, which uh, is military and is aimed externally at threats foreign, not domestic. Now, what he told you when he did the state or the address to the nation the other day on Thursday night was that China had attacked us. So a attack on elections by international law is a weapon of mass destruction. It is categorized exactly the same as a nuclear bomb, a chemical weapon, a biological weapon. These are all weapons of mass destruction, including digital, by the way. A digital attack is a weapon of mass destruction. We've seen several attacks on pipeline systems, uh, which could cut off the flow of uh, oil and gas, and people in portions of the country that rely on that for heat. You could literally have people dying from these cutoffs of energy supply that are done remotely digitally and attacks on our energy infrastructure, uh, electricity grids, pipelines, all sorts of things. So a digital attack is technically, if it's waged from a foreign location by foreign actors, even if there's collusion by domestic actors, it is the use of a weapon of mass destruction, which then triggers national security responses. Uh, in placing the country in a national security emergency, as he did March 13th of 2020, and then building that out, this meme saying he resigns the presidency is actually accurate. Trump never had it removed. If he didn't want that said, why didn't he have it removed from the presentation at all these rallies he did over and over and over again, including when he had these Patton-esque type uh, presentations? He would walk off the back of the stage at the conclusion of a rally at a couple of these locations, and the curtains would be pulled back. He'd walk down the steps like the scene in Patton, and they would. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to. Uh, Apologize. I can't block out calls, and I had an incoming call here, so uh, had to send it to outer space. But he would walk off the stage at the back of these presentations, and what you would see was an American flag, just like in the movie Patton, except for one thing: the stars were blacked out. Now, the reason that's important is because it's a warning in the language of flags, the language of semaphore, which I've told this audience and many others, the president is using as his communication system to patriots and to other countries, right there in the open. All presidents have certain things that their friends and buddies know. This is how I'm going to communicate secret messages right out in the open. Trump's is the language of flags. In the language of flags, blacked out stars mean you're in occupied territory. Don't trust anyone. Don't trust anything they say as being genuine. Challenge anybody and beware that you're in occupied territory. They breach the gates. They're on the ground with us. How many traitors have been exposed, treasonous persons, un-American persons, over the last several years as this drama is played out to the public? Many, many. And so Trump, while he appears, based on what he said, he resigned the presidency, has been operating as the commander in chief. We're already in a declared national emergency. And by the way, by the laws that were invoked when he signed that national security emergency, Congress has 365 and a quarter days to overturn and revoke um, uh, a national security emergency, which the president would declare moving into the commander in chief role. That meant that 1 year after he declared the COVID national emergency, if Congress, with a two-thirds vote, both by the House and the Senate, a two-thirds or greater vote, if they haven't revoked that national security act, they cannot. Trump operates as king in the interest of protecting the country. And until he stops the national security emergency, it stays in play. Biden couldn't dismiss it, end it. Congress couldn't after that 365 and a quarter days. So the only person is Trump, or if he's not alive or functional, then the three generals that run the NORAD Cheyenne Mountain system. It's actually 100 facilities or more, but the primary is Cheyenne Mountain in our nuclear deterrent response and beyond. So when Trump does what he's about to do regarding elections, it's not declaring a national security emergency. It's enunciating, clarifying, expanding it to include stopping false election. And so with a potential crime against the people, sealing the deal on fraudulent primaries and like that. So when he does that, it's just an extension of an already existent declared national emergency, and nothing Congress can do can stop him because that's already passed. That's why when we say trust the plan, you have to understand there's aspects of it that aren't fully understood, even by very connected people. And when he did that, it was still during his first term in office. His first term was interrupted with all sorts of mischief, including the Russia stuff, and trying to impeach him and move him out of office. The reality is, he wasn't able to actually govern appropriately as his elected position would allow him to do because of this interference, both domestically with frauds, with the Russiagate stuff, and globally with the China interference and like that, and interference including in the upcoming election. Therefore, if he decides to run again 2028, wouldn't be his third term. It would be his second term because even this last election, 2024, was held in an environment where we're in a national security emergency. And there's other aspects of it that he didn't concede the first election. He didn't agree that Biden won. He didn't give up the nuclear command and control, which I've talked extensively about previously. So with all that in mind, even this latest election is theater and staging while we got to the right position to do the rest of the fight back. but I thought, I understood, but everything, they said this and that. Yeah, you're in a wartime condition. Uh, Deception is part of war. Get over it. Okay, get over it. Uh, Including to our enemies, even friends, internal. Um, uh, what if what if he'd gone against COVID hard enough and just stopped and said we aren't going to do it? It was a global attack, and many believe the propaganda. We probably would have had a civil war already had he done certain things. So he had to try and give people the understanding. We're Nazi occupied France. Operate accordingly while we fight back to get to a position to actually physically engage and have a prayer, other than just guerrilla actions here and there to thwart their activities. You are in a wartime condition right now. That's a fact. Everything you see around you reinforces that. That's a fact. Get over it. And on the fight back, the pivot point really was Fauci. And we get into the rest of the stuff from there. So there you go.
Thank you, Juan. I know we're into approaching a second hour here. I do want to get one or two more topics on before you go.
Well, I do have, I
Yes.
have something in the background that I've got to address that because of the time of the day, there's an answer I need to give to them. Give me about 3 minutes. I'll
Mhm.
address that. I'll be right back with you.
Perfect. Thank you, Juan.
All right.
Yep. All right, folks, we're waiting for Juan O Savin to come back. Sure, this is an extended broadcast between Juan's schedule and hopping the continents of the world, and my schedule here in Thailand, being 11 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time, and the demands on my schedule. He and I don't get to broadcast as much as we used to, but when we do, it counts. And so I hope you re-listen to this broadcast, and by all means, share it far and wide. It's extremely important. I'm going to be talking with Juan in a few moments about a division and a confusion that is within our movement, led by and large by podcasters, some well-intended, some ill-informed. And we're going to break down a bit. He's been asked this before. I'm going to raise it again because now we're getting close to the thick of it. And I'm talking about the RV, the Nasaragasara, whereas in my opinion, some of those elements of that are taking place. Is it going to be exactly as that bill, if you will, was written? Probably not. I already know where Juan may go with that. But I want to get Juan on the record. We're going to talk about that a bit. Uh, there are 4 nuke devices missing. I'd like Juan to talk with us about that. And then, if we have the time, and we may not, just a cursory view of Antarctica, Golden Dome, aliens, and Trump releasing the tranches of information. And on that note, I'll just make a few announcements. Off World with JMC will be published again. It's a monthly. Our third episode. We have confirmed Dr. Sala. We have confirmed retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox, and we're zeroing back in on Alex Collier, which I'm very much hopeful he will be able to join us this episode as well. I launched recently to very favorable reviews. Thank you, folks. I'm trying to keep the conversation going, keep us all together, and that's Fireside Chats with JMC. You can find that up on our platform and distribution channels. That'll be a monthly as well. Christy Lee is killing it and crushing it in healthcare. Be sure to check out those broadcasts. She just had Dr. Lee Merritt on. Was just published hours ago. You'll want to watch that episode. We're launching. Dawn Martin, who's in charge of the healthcare division of JMC Broadcasting. She will be producing and putting together a panel, I believe it's in August, with 4 doctors. I don't have a confirmation of the names, but they're the right ones, trust me. And they'll be discussing healthcare related issues, and then later a second monthly panel. These will be ongoing. Sort of like my Global Defense War panel and my Eyes on Gitmo panel. There'll be parallel panels in the healthcare arena. And we have a second host coming to join us. Christy Lee's unable to accommodate due to scheduling issues at this time, but she'll continue the weekly Truth About Health. And then we will have another host host the panel shows. And the second panel show, and each of these will be monthly, will cover by and large, the justice aspect, the legislation aspect, what is being accomplished, what obstacles is Bobby Kennedy having, what successes are we having, what's on the horizon, and that'll dovetail clearly into Gitmo at the appropriate time. And if we're listening closely to Juan, sure sounds like 2027 to me. But there's so many things I'd like to ask Juan, but time just won't allow. And but we're going to get into perhaps one or two more subjects before Juan gets back on. Uh, as I was stating on the first break that Juan had to take prioritized calls. I use the word activated. It might not be a word Juan cares for, but shh, it's between you and me. But anyway, Juan is self-activating and activated, in my humble opinion. We're in a different phase of this war. How many times has Juan reminded us that we are at war? And we've been saying that since the theft of 2020. And it's heating up, folks. You know, it's not to be understated. Cat 3 to Cat 7 approaching in 2027. That's a big statement. That's why I'm going to talk about nukes in the economy in a moment and see how that relates to the increase of 3 to 7. That's probably a spot that's going to be, because retaliation, uh, even though the exit ramps are locked, even though we have the 500,000 sealed indictments, even though we've been processing in the JAGs and the boats and the planes and at Gitmo and Guam and everywhere else over these years, there's a lot of work yet to be done, a lot of information yet to be disclosed and revealed of what has happened, and a lot of things yet to happen that will be unfolding. But to Juan's point a moment ago, you know, yeah, pray, plan, and prepare and stay properly informed. I always say, whittle down your resources of noisemakers. Find those that you believe are delivering the truth to the best of their ability, experts that have expertise in the area, economic, military, intelligence, healthcare, and off world. And then do your own homework and research. But way past the point of picking a lane. If you're not in the lane by now, you're never going to be. And so just get with the program. But at the same time, you know, pray, plan, and prepare. We do have to um, find joy in every day. As Juan said, get out there to the summit, meet other patriots, meet Juan and some of the high-powered guests he has on there, and you'll have a sense of family and human family, patriot family, camaraderie, and it's grounding. And of course, in your daily lives, I'm not preaching to everyone. In fact, I practice what I preach. Um, those that know me and follow my work, you don't hear me coughing much, do you, any longer? Thank goodness for that. And that went on for a couple of months. And while I did some of the healthy remedies and so forth, as well as medical at the hospital, you know what really tipped it off? When I took 3 days off last month, and it's an hour and a half flight for me to get down to the beautiful islands in Thailand. Koh Samui is a place I enjoy. But grounding, earthing on the sand, walking every day in the beautiful hot sun, and just taking a breather. Sure, I brought my laptop, did a few things, but I didn't have to broadcast. I didn't have to run the intensity of what I do every day, pretty much from 5 in the morning till 7, 8, 9 at night, most days of the week. I do need a break, and I'll be taking another one of those. I'm leaving tomorrow, 4 days. I'll bring the laptop with me. I do have some things to do, but they're creative things. I'm going to make an announcement. I'm buying time here, folks. I'm rambling. I could have cut the feed and edited it and did all that, but hopeful Juan will come back on in a few moments. But while we're waiting, um, it's just in the incubation phase in the think tank of JMC. I made the announcement to my team in a team meeting just the other day, mainly to a gentleman who does my advanced production work. Uh, he will. He's welcomed my invitation, and I'm going to be producing more than likely, that's not firm, a 60-minute documentary. And now it's not going to be a la Mickey Willis. I don't have the budget or the expertise. and the camera crew and so forth and so on that a Mickey Willis has. And we love Mickey Willis. I've interviewed him, I've met him, and we'll be bringing him on to the healthcare side soon. Hey, we've got Juan O Savin coming back in. I'll interrupt myself. Juan, when you're ready, just say hello and we'll pick up where we left off. Juan is in Bangkok and heading to another country very soon. He's changed locations. I recognize it all as I was just there recently. Juan, are you with me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I know you might abruptly need to end this broadcast. So before that potentially happens, I want to move us into an area that you have discussed with me 2 and 3 years ago and off camera. And I'm sure it's been raised throughout the podcast that you're lending your time to. But now that I have you here, and I just got a text from some very important people that are in my circle, and I'm glad they did that because I want to raise this question. All right, Nasara Gasara. I know it's like beating the dead pony, but it's important because we're encroaching upon new phases of economic change with the Federal Reserve partially being moved into the Treasury, with the president talking about potentially no need for federal income tax down the line, and a lot of narratives out there. Elon Musk's high universal income, and everything in between. But Nasara Gasara, I have a copy of the 100-page bill and all that noise in there. In my opinion, and I'll turn it over to you, one, to boldly put it in place on the record that I can share with everyone to put the issue to bed. In my opinion, certain aspects of Nasara Gasara are unfolding, and certain things we seemingly are going to unfold. But the entire Nasara Gasara, you've been well on the record say, and the RV, which is the revaluation of the dinar, the zim, and the dong, and others. Clarify all of that for our viewers. Of course, there's going to be a revaluation of currencies. After all, look what's happening with the dollar, and we don't have time to get into that right now. But is everyone going to become a millionaire overnight with their dinar, their zim, and so forth? And Nasara Gasara, are some elements true and some elements not true? Please break it down for us. I know you've done this before, but we've got a new audience and we've got a raised awareness and a lot of division in the podcaster space on this very subject. Can you help us out, sir?
Well, first off, it's inaccurate to say that we're going to move the Federal Reserve into the Treasury. The Federal Reserve is a private banking club cabal, um, and it's a wing of the International Reserve System being run out of the City of London, and their basal operations out of Switzerland, things like that. The reality is that we are reestablishing the Treasury authorities and obligations constitutionally, and going to a Treasury-based monetary system as opposed to a international reserve system. We don't need, don't want, aren't going to have anything to do with their operations. There will be a period where both the Treasury operations and the Federal Reserve operations and the global reserve system are operating together right there in plain sight. And the comparison would be the era when Kennedy had the silver certificates um, for a period of time issued by the U.S. Treasury, as opposed to the Federal Reserve notes. And Johnson shut that down almost immediately upon taking office within a few days. So we're going to rarefied ground that many people have speculated on, but they don't fully understand. The Gasara Nasara, as advertised, including the dinar and all the other Zim bonds and everything else, was the other team's plan. Had Hillary won, they would have already collapsed the dollar and moved us into this other way of monetization, of holding our wealth, of converting our life energy, minutes, days, hours of our life that we work and get script for, uh, moving our life energy into a medium of trade, which was these reserve notes, Federal Reserve notes. And by the way, with all of their wonky occult imagery all through the dollar bill and prophetic stuff, even the Twin Towers being showed, if you fold the bills right and all that other, it's quite bizarre. We're not going to be run by this globalista uh, uh, here within our country, and we're taking that back. That's why I say honest money. They're a half a footstep behind honest elections, and it was hijacked through fraud. The people who participated in hijacking control of our currency here in America, in collusion with, literally, demons, Luciferians in nature, and specifically as those various orders exist. We're moving away from that, but for a period of time, they'll run concurrently. Uh, there are aspects of the things that are going to happen, which some people could interpret as an implementation of Gesara Nasara, but not completely so. It's just like within the senior executive service operations for continuity in government between elected administrations, which is what their um, uh, authorities are that they work under, their mission statement. The reality is the superseding organization that actually handles continuity in government and had pre-existing authorities which have not been overturned, even though they tried to usurp them, is NORAD, which is what the president is operating in and through, and reestablishing constitutional government here in America. And the Constitution says that the Treasury will mint gold and silver coin, and that is the currency uh, that is used for all debts, public and private. Not this reserve currency, which is based on a bankrupt and a bankruptcy operation against America. So the Zim bond, the dinar, that's somebody else's rules. In fact, it's like saying, we're going to play football today. Oh, okay. Well, what kind of football? Are we playing NFL type football or college football? The rules are close, but they are different. Are we playing flag football or tag like we might do in junior high or high school? Are we, because we don't want to kill off players, are we playing European football? Is it rugby or is it soccer? They all call those football. The rules vary in all of them. And the players that have the whole Gesara, Nasara, Zimbond, Dinar thing in their sights are saying that by international law, these promises made by treasonous traitors within the intelligence system, primarily in the US case CIA, in collusion with other intelligence agencies, did these deals into Iraq and other countries. And at the time they did it, they promised that they were going to pay back, according to certain rules, all of those monies. Okay. Well, it was done through fraud against the American people. And it was done based on somebody else's rules within the international reserve currency systems. Does that obligate the Treasury? Does it obligate the U.S. to those frauds? No. In fact, let them pay it all off. What they've done is they've put in place, beyond even the dinar and everything else, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that are already printed, that are valid Federal Reserve notes, that actually have numbers that are ready to go, what we call on ledger. In other words, within the internationally recorded uh, um, paper currency in circulation around the world. So they have a system ready to go with money pre-printed, which was intended to flood countries around the world. Remember, the dollar is traded all over the world, even to the exclusion of the local currencies as being good as gold. So within the Federal Reserve and the International Reserve System, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars were printed, pallets and pallets. And you have no idea. Uh, a pallet has 100 million on it. They have half pallets and stuff like that, but a full pallet's $100 million. So 10 pallets is a billion. Okay. They have trillions and trillions and trillions printed and sitting in countries all over the world, that the plan was to flood the markets all over the world with those dollars, break the confidence in the dollar
Mhm.
with that, not through the banks, but on the black market where nobody wanted a dollar. And then to force the world, because of this attack, counterfeiting, which wasn't counterfeit, um, uh, the world's going to have to go to a digital currency, starting with the US. And they had a plan to go to a digital currency and to throttle that coming in. Now, okay, you want to, look, supply and demand. If suddenly all these people holding dinar and zim bonds are gatrillionaires, they're all going to fly their own 747. They're all buying a 50,000 acre ranch. They all have a plan. The plan was you have to have some kind of a charitable operation, and 90% of the money has to go save babies, help veterans, feed the population. They all have great stuff. You race to the bank at the appointed hour when somebody, gives the magic go code. And then if you get there in time, you're somehow going to be able to get monetized your thing. If all your paperwork's correct, you're going to get deposits in your account, and you're going to be able to go out and do that. The reality is, if you suddenly flood the market with all of this digital currency at the same time over a period of a day or two, now supply and demand, the price of a 747 will go from 50 million to 5 billion. Why? Because there's only so many 747s. And then even if you get your 747, what's the cost to maintain it? And if everybody's got all this money being thrown at them, who's going to be around to want to work to maintain it? It's not realistic in the way the world actually works. So what happens is you got conned. That's the reality of it. And until you've been conned by a really good con man, it's hard to grasp.
Mhm.
It's painful. And a lot of the people involved, just like in any Ponzi scheme, is you get, somebody's bought in, they got some money, they're going to reinvest it because they got to get more. The greed factor comes in. And then as you get to the last moments of a Ponzi scheme, all the key players have their money and they're out.
Yep.
The rest of the people who put their reputation on the line amongst their friends and buddies to join in, when they go to do the final flip, where's the guys that put this whole thing together? You're the one holding the bag. You're the one who's used your personal credit. You don't realize those early guys, they were colluding. They were working together. That's what's been going on behind the scenes in these areas. I just had a conversation, I think it was yesterday, the day before, with somebody who is been physically in the room with an unimaginable amount of dollars on pallets, and just hard to even discuss. And when the discussions were happening, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was discussion of Federal Reserve System buying back these pallets of cash, putting the digital online on Ledger at 70 cents on the dollar on those pallets. Didn't happen. And they looked very close, very, very connected people working, including inside Treasury, to help pull it off. But they didn't happen. There's a handful of pallets that we have already purchased back. I don't think there's very many left that would validly be repurchased. The rest of them are what we call M0. They're not on Ledger, and the serial numbers are not on Ledger. So technically they can't be traded through the international banking system. For all the promises, they were negotiating at 50 cents on the dollar. Uh, Supposedly, China, I think it was true, was trying to buy up pallets at 30 cents on the dollar, thinking that they could hold them against the U.S. to be included in debts. The number that has been within what happened even in the last few days was 5%, and three offered. So they're offering 3% of the face value of a pallet with $100 million on it. Yeah, because in reality, it's a game. They're playing with these people. They never intend to honor them from within the U.S. Treasury system. And the international reserve system, see how that plays. When you start putting it out there, go ahead and buy your dinar. Use that currency to do it. What's it going to be worth? But if you want to talk about international obligations within the way they want to play football, yeah, you're obligated. You better pay that back. What happens to the value of these Federal Reserve notes as we come online with gold-backed U.S. Treasury notes? How's that game going to play? America's going to come out on top, and what's it going to buy? Even at a fraction of a cent. And by the way, what's the situation for those people that are sitting on those pallets? They have to have controlled environments. They involve huge areas, security, cameras, everything else, access. At some point, they're sitting on a boat anchor out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Okay, of how's that going to work? They're in trouble. We're not in trouble. Our system is in trouble. Go trade it on the international markets. The gold-backed treasury dollar is going to look fantastic. Gold and silver are going to look fantastic. So it doesn't play against us, it plays for us. The real issue is, are you going to get caught? Well, I was thinking about another conversation I just had. A person has sold some significant properties. Should they put it in the stock market? Well, if they put it in the stock market, how are they going to get paid? The obligations within the um, uh, locations where they would trade it in aren't to pay them back in treasury notes, to pay them back in Federal Reserve notes. So if you have a crisis, the crisis is you might double or triple your value in the stock market, but then you get paid back with currency that's going down in value and have a tax obligation on a capital gain. Seriously? This is maybe that moment, where you rethink that there might be some mining stocks and other stuff that could make sense, but you're in a perilous moment. And having things that have real value, it doesn't have to be gold or silver. It might be tractors, something within an industry that you have influence and control over. But it is a dangerous moment. You got to think on your feet. And the Gasara and Nasara thing is part of somebody else's game. I think you have to be very careful not to get caught up in a game and rules that are about to get wiped off the table with what Trump's about to do and doing.
Thank you, Juan. While we're on the subject of revaluations, you and I discussed this. If you can briefly get this on record here. Obviously, silver has been put on a rare minerals list, I believe, for its importance.
It's strategic materials. So in order to
Thank you.
maintain our military readiness, certain strategic materials are needed in order to build an F-22, an F-35, communication systems, and all that. Silver, there's no other material that really can substitute for silver within servers and communications and things like that. At the current prices, it's below the cost of production. Even though the price value of silver has gone up, it's in an environment where the value of the money's gone down. And so mining companies, to make the commitment to build these very expensive modern mines here in the US and elsewhere, there's a certain number that they need to sell the silver at that warrants diving in and committing to multi-year projects. You know, you don't just turn it on in an afternoon. You have to get all the equipment. You have to train the workers. You have to have a strategy, even in a known deposit, and you have to have certain environmental things. We're not going to, do it at the expense of the environment, not here in America. And you need silver for this industrial and reindustrialization of America. Much of the work, if you look out 10 and 15 years, 20 years in America, because when we reindustrialize, it's not just for this president's term, it's to have the basis for health and growth within the industrial sector for generations to come. That's a high technology thing. We're not just going to reindustrialize and build on the surface. We're reindustrializing, building, stepping into space. And the occupation of space is going to be radically greater than most people here right now even envision. Several of us are out there want to build our space platforms. Those platforms, even with this discussion of all these server farms that they want to build around the country, the reality is the proper place to build them is in Earth orbit and where there isn't an impact. How far are we from being able to do that? Well, not that far. Arguably on the short side, 10 years. So a lot of these huge server farms that they want to put in neighborhoods like that will be outdated in 15 years and be based in Earth orbit. The connections that all of these things need to work properly in this modern age, silver is intricate to all of that. So silver was specifically added to the list of materials, which
Sorry, folks. Looks like we've lost Juan O Savin. I'm going to go out on a limb. I've done these before with him. He's run out of charge, is my guess, and that is unfortunate because I had a follow-up question as to his forecast on where silver will be in the mid-term future, and as well as the resetting of the value of gold by the stroke of a pen of the administration to estimated 20,000 or north of that a little bit per ounce. I can tell you because I had these discussions with Juan privately in Bangkok. He's got silver at least $100 an ounce come the end of the year, and significantly higher than that down the line. He is also, Shay, I hate to put words in his mouth. I wish he was available, but I know he's run out of charge. I'll buy a few more minutes. I'll share with you some insights, and then we'll wrap up this broadcast. But on gold, Juan is pretty much certain on the record that the president will revalue gold, as was once done back, I think it was Roosevelt. Yeah, and he is stated 20,000 an ounce, but not as high as 25,000, and the reasons why are probably more important than the number it's pegged to. But I'm not Juan, and Juan is unavailable at the moment. But you can pretty much, I'm paraphrasing Juan from meeting with him 3 days ago in Bangkok. Silver at about 100, perhaps by the end of the year, and certainly further up than that down the line. Reasons that Juan would have explained. And the second is gold, again, being revalued at 20,000, folks. Buy gold, buy silver, buy now, for certain. And lastly, and he spoke about other commodities being he was really, I asked him, I said, what about going to, treasury-backed money markets and these sorts of things? And he raised a red flag even there on some of it. And he explained why. I'm going to get Juan on the record for that. Even if it's just a quick call with him, I save it, and I'm going to do a Patriot Q&A hour and explain all of that to our viewers and followers. Juan talked about nukes. There are four nuclear devices that he seems concerned about that are missing. I got a text coming in from Juan. Phone died. Give me 5 minutes to charge. I'll come back. I'm going to stick around. This is the times we're in, folks. Let me acknowledge Juan. 1 minute. Yeah. And so I'll tell you what I'm going to, yeah, let me continue. So uh, these nuke devices are obviously a concern. They're missing. Uh, and I'm going to ask Juan when he hops back on. We're into category 3 per Juan, using the metaphor of a hurricane, escalating to a 7. He's on the record now that that's mostly going to take place not tomorrow morning, that escalation, but in 2027. I'm going to ask Juan when he comes back on, what elements are raising that cat level from 3 to 7? Is it the nukes? Is it some other forms of attack and retaliation? Is it disruptions that may come as a result of the 1 year potentially or longer election delay? Is it an economic meltdown in the bond sector, real estate, and so forth? Stocks, perhaps, which just hit an all-time high. These are important things I wanted to wrap the broadcast up with. And if Juan does make it back without any further interruptions, we're going to visit that to close out the broadcast. But I'll swing to some additional announcements that I was talking about before when Juan had to take an important call. Again, folks, it's not business as usual right now. And it's not fear time at all. It's never fear time. It's pray, plan, and prepare, and to be properly informed. And that's what I'm attempting to do here with Juan O Savin, one of my many great resources. And it's, people are playing games. They're playing games. Oh, I'll take a rock and throw it at this one because they said this and I don't agree with, or it's we're all doing the best we can. Various people are, of course, at various levels of knowledge, intelligence, read in, access, varying degrees, and others that have none. And then the podcasters that broadcast. You're certainly not getting much information on mainstream news anymore. I hope you're still not there. But you know, we're at war since the theft of our election. And we're in a continuity of government military operation. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Derek Johnson. Um, thank you, Guardian Daniel R. So these are some of my resources. People ask, hey, who are your resources? I'm very transparent. They're all published for you, my resources. Under jmcbroadcasting.com, click on contributors. They're all there. They're photographs, brief bios, and a link to follow them and their world. There is only one that remains anonymous, and that's normal and typical in the broadcasting space. We do have Juan back. Juan, your mic is muted. He's coming back. Okay, Juan, we're still here live. Can you say hello?
Yeah.
Okay, great. If you
Sorry about
can,
that. I killed my phone.
it's okay. If you can conclude on where you believe silver is going, price point wise, and the president resetting the value of gold. We discussed that in Bangkok. If you can encapsulate that for our viewers, that would be important. I have an issue or two to wrap up the broadcast and you get on with your day. And I appreciate if you would address those two issues right now.
Well, as a strategic metal, silver is critical. And if we're going to reindustrialize in the US, we want US raw materials to be at the core of this build out. And so having a price that is sufficient to guarantee that these companies go out and go specifically for silver and gold, which is going to be critical to the Treasury operation. Um, you have to have a floor that you're guaranteeing that they're not gambling just on Trump or a promise of reindustrialization as opposed to other places in the world, but right here. And by the way, that's why these high tariffs, to create an environment where we can restart locally inside the U.S. In a protected environment while they get back on their feet because they've been attacked. Mining operations across the U.S. have been attacked. Raw resources are core to rebuilding a country or building a country and to wealth, your own raw resources. So the negotiations are all over the map, but Vice President Vance is in fact leading the group that is looking at these strategic mineral supplies, rare earth elements, and silver, which has been added to that strategic metals list that are critical for military operations and will be critical to the broader economy. And in negotiating for contracts long term for silver supply from domestic mining suppliers, the numbers that have been bantered around float between 240 and 320 as a base price that the U.S. government, the U.S. military, will enter into contracts with domestic mining suppliers long term, that gives them the guarantee that as they build out their mining operations, there's a customer at a set price. When the U.S. government and or military enter into those supply contracts, these multi-year supply contracts, it will be at this agreed upon pricing. So the discussions, the negotiations leading to those contracts, and exactly how they're going to be built out, are floating around in that 240 to 320 range. And part of the rest of the conversation is, and in what kind of currency are we going to be paid? Because if there's a currency issue, how do you guarantee these guys don't go bankrupt? You know, they could take critical money from their corporate structure and from investors, put it into a mine, and all of a sudden it's not even, there's no profit there for it. They've gambled the operation and they're wiped out. They don't want to do that. They want to know that they're doing something that makes business sense and that they're well protected moving forward. So, with that in mind, what's that number? I've said publicly for quite a while, I don't think it's down at the low of 240, and I don't think it's over 300. I think it's at about 280. And even the discussion I had over the last couple of days, that was the number. Now, some of the mines in other places in the world can produce silver at low enough prices that they can be competitive, and they're in places that we actually want to support. So, do we go for a lower number and accept with the tariff supplies of silver? Does the price start at some price and then go to a different price? Does it start, say, at 300? And over time, as demand goes down potentially because more and more mines come up and there's more than enough supply, does that come down to 260 or even 240? Those are the negotiations that are in place. So they're mercurial. Nothing precise has happened yet. How soon would that get put in play? Well, there is an urgency to this supply problem. Remember, the president's getting ready to um, uh, do something more with available U.S. troops, and uh, uh, even the discussion of reinstituting the draft, not to invade Iran, by the way. You know, that's just dumbass. And that's not happening. So anybody that's saying that is really not anchored to what's really going on. But in the course of doing all this, uh, we're going to have a greater need, even just from the industry side. And technology, where's technology going right now? It's going to more and more connectivity, if you will. Uh, High tech in the sense of computerization, AI, all sorts of things like that. So the need for the high quality connectivity that silver does is pretty good. And the break point where the price is so high in silver, it starts to cripple the industries that would build the chips, the server farms, the um, machinery in this industrial operation that's coming, this, reindustrialization of America. It's somewhere up there in that 280 to 300 range where the cost per ounce becomes difficult and starts sucking away from the productivity of companies with those technologies and their competition worldwide. So it's in that zone, uh, somewhere 240 to 280, my personal belief, and that you're seeing a lower price right this second. There's still a lot of manipulation, people trying to get out of the way from the in the central bank system and other places of contracts that they have in place as they move from paper silver in the ethereal realms to tangible physical silver, and they're trying not to go bust, and they're trying to control what they can as they move into that area. But it's happening, and it's not going to stop. And by the way, digital currencies, pretty pretty questionable how that's going to go precisely, to the extent that they end up being tied to physical metals. They'll probably do well and better, including globally. But short of that, their utility is somewhat suspect. And by the way, the same people that brought you Facebook, which was actually called LifeLog over at DARPA, and Zuckerberg, who didn't invent Facebook, and neither did the Winklevoss twins, even if there's a court record of that, there's questions there. So uh, uh, the same people brought you Bitcoin and digital trading and currencies. And it was part of this plan to move the world into all digital, by undermining the dollar and all these other currencies in a currency crisis, trading crisis, and take over the world through digital currencies. Well, does that favor America? No, that was somebody else's plan. We're going to take it off the rails. So, what is the plan? Uh, Gold and silver coin minted by the U.S. Treasury, and you can have a note or receipt for that, but it'll be a Treasury note. It will not be a Federal Reserve note, and we're not moving the Federal Reserve into the Treasury. We're going to kill that monster right where it sits. That's why Trump last year closed the Board of Governors building in Washington, D.C. after the Army parade. Went and got all the papers and paperwork, including over at the Federal Reserve and some stuff at Treasury, and has been in the process of shutting those guys down. So enjoy the show, but don't be on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, without question. Thank you, Juan. The category 3 to 7 that transpires, but largely in 2027. You're on the record. I don't have the paraphrase or quote in front of me, so I won't do it much justice, but you know what you said. That what's to come, the pain that's to come yet, is going to be felt very heavily in the area of the financial arena. The 3 to 7 space, Cat 3 to Cat 7, presumably 2027, that period of time, that level of concern. Is that level of concern about the economy? Is that level of concern about the nuclear devices that have been stolen and not located, and or other retaliatory effects as things heat up in the justice? Is it a combination of all those things that escalate us from a 3 to a 7? I don't know if my question's clear, but that's the best way I could phrase it.
Well, I think for the people, for your mental gymnastics, if pausing the election is somewhere around a four, and these are arbitrary. I mean,
Sure.
you know, uh, some things may hit certain areas and certain populations harder than others.
Mhm.
Um, some places might even not even know there's an issue for the most part because they're insulated enough from all of these financial and political things. But within the political storm to come, the global storm to come, you pause the election here in America, and the reverberations out across the world are almost unimaginable. Why would pausing elections in the US have impact across the world? Because in the course of doing that, you're going to have a shift in the power base, political power base, business power base, who's a winner, who's a loser, etc. Um, that's going to take some time to build and intensify and focus. And because it's going after the people who've got into power through fraud, through treasonous alliances, not just in America, but other parts of the world. Um, it's going to be very disruptive, including into the economic business finance world. Um, as we work through that, it probably continues to intensify post announcement of a pause. And then as it gets more developed, as you see people going to Gitmo and the reporting and the disclosure of alliances and nation state level chest beating. How'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Who in your country was behind this? On both sides, all sides, including here in America. Um, it, you know, it's like the Allies plowing through Paris and the Nazis retreating before them. Uh, don't stick your head up out of the basement. You might get fragged by either side. There's a moment where the best thing you can do is get the hell out of the way. The Bible says a wise man sees trouble and gets out of the way. Okay, well, trouble's coming. How do you get out of the way? How are you exposed? Um, what kind of a job do you have? Uh, how's the money flow to you? How do you feed your family? How do you keep gas in the tank? Get the mortgage paid? And you kind of do the best you can to be prepared to weather it as best you can, and then be viable on the far side, um, and not overextend yourself at the wrong moment. Um, Try to get greedy or something like that. Uh, and there's other places where exactly the right angle, and some people will do it, will be to gamble on some certain thing, and they come through the far side and they look like geniuses. It's as personal as God's guidance in each individual. Um, are you on the right side of history? Are you on the right side of history from a divine perspective? Because a lot of things that looked genius and smart in alliances are going to look pretty dumbass in a you know divine perspective. And I think that that's much of what's about to happen in the world. That God Himself is intervening in the affairs of men. That's the biblical history. Um, God stepping in and disrupting all the wise man's plans, including to take over the world and to conquer the world and control the world and move it into an entire slave planet. Um, so prayer required, and you can't look to just any guru. I can give you ideas and thoughts about what is afoot, but um, is there advice for the single mother living in an apartment in New Jersey? That's like a God thing. Your exact circumstances and your best move to get out of the way of what's coming is very personal. Do you have relatives? Do you have another place you should be? Is there a different job? How would I know that? And conversely, One of the people that I was talking with probably a month and a half ago, runs a, um, a manufacturing company. It's one of the most important manufacturing companies on planet Earth, making engines for huge industrial operations that it's just stunning when you actually get into the weeds on it. Um, the things that that person can and should do and needs to do, both for their board and the shareholders, and as a critical infrastructure location to several governments around the world. It's different. So, you know, prayer required, but change is coming and it's going to be very, very gripping. And you need for each person individually some kind of guidance that can't just come from a guru. You might be able to get some advice, some thoughts, some input, but ultimately the decision you make, you're going to have to own, and you won't be able to blame it on anybody. Um, God can provide a path for each person present, that's outside even the wisdom of men. You know, you can make a calculation. Proverbs says that, you know, we make the plans, but God blesses them. And so if you want your plans to be blessed, you better make that final consultation. Okay, here's what intelligence, reason, my history tell me I should do next. Please, God, if I'm off track, help me out here. You know, and that, uh, you know, God, if you ask for bread, will he give you a stone? If you ask for uh, a fish, will he give you a serpent? Um, he's a good God. He wants you to communicate, and he gives answers to each man or woman. Um, you know, come to him in faith. Please help me. I trust you, God. Nobody else. What's my next move? And uh, you know, I mentioned metals a lot, but that may not be the right answer for many people in this audience. There's something else that's a more secure route based on your history, your location, your skill sets, etc. It's a personal thing. So, you know, figure it out.
Thank you, Juan. Someone once said, space, the final frontier. Let's wrap this engaging discussion up with Antarctica. Obviously, we could do a whole series of episodes on this, but briefly, the president, of course, is finally, we have a president who has revealed these files, slowly but surely, of off-world activity, UAPs and UFOs and aliens. Antarctica, technologies from aliens, Golden Dome. We have Elon Musk talking about Mars and other places. What can you tell us about the activity under the ice in Antarctica as it relate, and does it relate to these files that are now starting to come out? There's got to be, this isn't done on a whim, releasing these files, and I believe they're going to build and build, and we're in for some extraordinary trending news stories a little down the line. Not so much today with this subject, but comment on it if you will, and then we'll wrap up our discussion.
Um, you know, uh, we we have to be careful. It would be easy to be taken off track on the urgent things
Mhm.
that we can and must address right now within our society and what the plan and steps ahead are just now uh, to get to honest elections and to get to honest money and to stop the wars around the planet that we're being pushed into through various uh, frauds that continue to uh, destroy lives uh, and populations and to bleed our economies towards a wartime setting. Within that context, uh, we're dealing with a breakaway that has embedded itself um, literally for over 200 years from that environment. And much of what's gone on here is um, portrayed as alien, but not from another planet, other organizations, whatever. It's more terrestrial than some people want to admit. And think of the divergence of advancement from the last, say, 500 years of Africa versus uh, Northern Europe. Um, you would almost look at Northern Europe as a breakaway from other parts of the world, accelerating and reinforcing that build out in ways that weren't duplicated in other places. And that doesn't mean hasn't existed in Africa. Look at some of the structures. North Africa with Egypt, one of the most advanced places on the planet. We find similar with the Aztecs and Mayans in Central and South America. There's some societies that advance faster than others with that mindset. Something happened that was built out, reinforced, and not broadly understood. It wasn't the Nazis. Nazis came later, but there is something that we're having to address. That's been placed somewhat in check, but that is in part the reason why we're going to the Golden Dome and to match technologies with some operations that threaten us, that are portrayed in various different ways. Uh, we're not going to get overwhelmed, outnumbered, anything. In fact, much of that technology we have, we just need to make it coherent. So this is not yet the time to be distracted in our conversations there. It is being addressed, um, but it's not, it almost freezes people up. So going there for the moment probably isn't precisely appropriate. Let's get the elections under control and who's in charge and who's colluding with who. And then our economy, how we get paid for as a medium of exchange for our moments, days, hours of our life, so we can have honest transactions, honest money, honest elections in a world that's moving towards peace, not expanding war. Uh, and then we can address some of these other things,
Sure.
including through the industrialization of America and building up these defenses. President Trump has been relatively low key, but in the visible side, very diligent in seeing to it that these technologies, which threaten us all and threaten to move, you know, decades and decades ahead of where we're at within our military infrastructure, do not succeed. The Golden Dome is aimed to supersede what we have right now with the um, ballistic missile dome that Reagan put in place through SDI, and to stop salting the earth with some of these sprays like that, um, which suited a moment, is still necessary, but will only be necessary for a short while longer. So don't want to get lost in that. It's a discussion for another day. Let's get through this moment that's facing us as we build back out, and by divine assistance, divine hand, go against these Luciferians and their plans and mechanisms and machinations to own and control the world, and that which they don't own and control to destroy.
Thank you, Juan. Here come all the little sound bites and your final words. We are in a spiritual battle between good and evil. God always wins. We're on God's side. This is the battle of dark to light. Uh, Most of the exit ramps are locked down for these people at this time, and the dawning of the golden age is upon us. Leave us with some inspiration, if you will, about what the future, although there's many dark days ahead and challenges, what trajectory are we actually heading on, and what does the 10, 5, 10, 20-year future look like for children, grandchildren, and those here down the line?
Well, the pilgrims that came here on the Mayflower, there was other groups, specifically the Roanoke group that came here and tried to build out a establishment, and they burned out. They dedicated that establishment to King George, um, King of England, I should say, and um, it burned out by divine hand. The pilgrims came here to get out from under the thumb of the royalists and the wealth of Europe, and to establish their own um, operations where they would own the fruits of their own labors. And they envisioned building out a society of farms and factories, industrialization, and to go out and to bring the good news to the world from that lily pad before they would even uh, get off of the boat, the Mayflower, while they were inside the harbor there at Plymouth, which is a beautiful harbor. It's got a huge long uh, spit that goes out and protects that inner area. And so while they were there on the boat, before they would even leave the boat, they entered into a compact, an agreement between each other, and covenanted with God Himself in heaven about what they intended to do, what their intent was, their desire in a society that served God's purposes. And having entered into that covenant, got in the boats, came to shore, and all that we see around us in America and much of the rest of the world is a result of that covenant. Even the Constitution and the states as they formed and all that. You couldn't have a 1776 without a 1620 landing. And the other landing that was dedicated to the king burned out. God's hand is on this. There's all sorts of amazing stories that I will enjoy to tell out in the future that haven't been told broadly um, from that early location here in America. But if you think about it, with the 400 plus intervening years since the landing of the Pilgrims and what has happened within this vast country where we live in the United States, and by extension to societies around the world, you add 400 years to this as we stretch out into low Earth orbit and then within the planets of our solar system and out from there. Uh, it's something stunning, but it will not happen without divine protection, assistance, intervention. In fact, it could come completely off the rails and blow itself to smithereens. And that's the threat. And so, um, will we see an anniversary 400 years from now? In the God economy, that's a breath away. Um, those pilgrims accurately saw the future that they wanted to build out, and it became real. We have to hone our thoughts, understand the context of what we're doing, and there's an entire new West. Uh, we're going to stretch out in our solar system, going where somebody's gone before. There's some ancient history there, but going where no man has gone before is slightly different. And we're going to go out and build that out. And we're going to do it by divine inspiration and protection if it's going to have a prayer. God governs in the affairs of men. That's the big picture from a biblical sense. Um, and you're not going to do it apart from God's blessing. And those people that try to do it in a Luciferian sense, as though the devil's going to get to build us out, are wrong. and we're going to go prove them to be wrong. That's the future. That's the Abrahamic covenant in this current generation and these people here. And the carrying capacity of the earth, the density of lands around the world, um, we have a long ways we could go terrestrially to build out the population. But as you stretch out into low Earth orbit and higher orbit and out to the planetary system, the carrying capacity of the solar system is literally trillions of times what we have here on the earth. And that's exactly where we're going. That's what the whole biblical story is about. Children is the sand of the seashore, a physical seed shoot. We only had a couple of dump truck loads that have lived to this moment in time. And that's the promise to Abraham and his promise for children, nations out into the future. And as the stars in the heaven, we haven't even put the tiniest little scratch in that glass ceiling. And we're about to bust right through it. And it's going to be stunning. How many people might actually populate this small corner of the galaxy 400 years from now as we stretch out into space? Is it 2, 3, 10 times the current population? If you have the Luciferian concept with wars and destruction, um, in their wet dreams, it'd be a tiny fraction. They'd own it, and the rest would be robots and AI. But that is not the divinely inspired way. And it's not what the promise was to Abraham and his seed. It wasn't to have AI and robots that are, like sand on the seashore, stars in the heaven. It's children, a physical seed, a spiritual seed, which implies a soul, to go out and occupy these spaces. That's us. And that's what we're going to do. That's the God plan. And the devil isn't going to win. And we're about to see that happen. We're going to incarcerate people who want to enslave the population of the planet through false elections and false money.
Thank you, Juan. And to that note, folks, visit unauthorized.one, and one is ONE, unauthorized.one, and get connected up to the Storm Summit, stormsummit.us, and meet Juan O Savin and many others at this very critical time in September, covering the events, pretty much everything that we've talked about in this episode here yeah, will be unpacked there. So get out there and meet Juan and be part of history. We'll be streaming the event for those that just can't make it out there, and for those in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. We'll be streaming it at jmcbroadcasting.com, and perhaps also on some of our distribution channels as well. I can't thank you enough, Juan, for your time. This has been a great discussion, very thorough. I'll call it the world according to Juan, and Juan a little bit more unleashed than we've seen in the past. And I appreciate that very much. These are the things that matter, and I'm glad we have it on record. Hopefully, you and I can get back together. Let's see, where are we? August, perhaps after the summit when you settle down in October. It'll be a very important time. I'd love to be able to do this again with you then, and we'll follow up with you. That's a wrap. TheJenniferMack.com. Visit TheJenniferMack.com. Lots of interesting recipes and products and Juan-inspired material, and so forth and so on. Any quick announcements or anything else, Juan, before we sign off?
Well, the summit's going to be epic. I mean, again, the Ahern Hotel sold out several weeks ago. We're close on one of the other hotels close by. There's still some rooms at a discount there, including the Trump. And so get signed up. I mean, the price goes up again shortly. And so, save a buck and sign up early and get your hotel rooms while they're still available to discounts. Um, uh, because we got some pretty steep discounts on the hotel rooms that are ultra cool, and come have a great time, hang out with other patriots. The best part of a Trump rally is the time you get to spend with other patriots, even before the president gets there. The best part of these summits is just hanging out with other like-minded people, developing friendships that last forever, and of getting to enjoy something together that's going to be incredibly unique. We're going to go places with 9/11 nobody's gone to before, and look at that again in the light of current events. The election materials with several of the presenters focused on the uh, latest within the election infrastructure. We're the last ones up before the midterms, probably, as far as an event of any significance. White House has acknowledged that. And then just having fun. My presentation, Architects of the Illusion, I think is going to be very important. So, and then just the speakers list is off the charts. So come enjoy it.
You bet. And to that note, we had three folks that are affiliated with JMC Broadcasting that went to the Fraud Fighter Summit. Actually, four: Sheila Holm, Christy Allen from Tsunami of Truth, Julie Donuts, who's with us doing some programming, and more to come, folks, as well as a gentleman named Paul. They were all there. They're part of JMC Broadcasting, and it is a great moment of camaraderie. They were thrilled to death, and they're all going back to the event in September. Can't thank you and your Chief of Staff, retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack. Can't thank you, gentlemen, enough for what you do to put these events on. And why don't you just make it very clear, because we've discussed this off camera. Money is not going into the Juan O Savin private bank account to put these things on. You want to just address that for briefly, sir?
Yeah, it's going the other way.
Yeah, exactly.
We try to do these things as close to at cost as possible. Didn't quite happen last time, but I'm trying to at least hold so we don't go bankrupt doing it. And if you compare to other events and all that, there's two things. People have wanted us to do a private conclave with the speakers, and they're willing to pay a bunch more. And I know that that's the common with almost all the events, but it's a kind of an exclusivity that I don't think is where we want to go, and so we haven't. The speakers are there to hear other speakers as much as you in the audience, and so they're sitting right out there with you. They're not hiding in some speaker room for the most part. They're right out with the rest of the people listening to speaker by speaker. In fact, we do have a location that we're going to allow vendors first time here at this event. However, it's not on the main floor. You don't have to go through the gauntlet to go there. And then during the actual speakers, that area is going to be closed, so they're not having people traipsing around, running back and forth and distracting a lot, because I want the people that are there as vendors to enjoy the event. Also, everything we got going, every time you turn around, it's another world-class person presenting or something really important you want to be in the loop on. So during the breaks, the vendors will have their stuff going before the event, after the event. There'll be plenty of time, and then we have it very limited. There's only 26 vendors going to be allowed. So I think it's better for the vendors. It's better for the people attending, and then it's in a separate room there at the Ahern, so that you don't have the noise, the racket within the broader thing, and you don't have the distraction during the actual event for everybody involved. So we'll see how it works, but I want the vendors to be able to make a buck. We literally have it right at cost for the vendors, so we're not charging some big buck or something like that. I want them to be able to pay their bills too, and so we're trying to do things that are a bit different than might otherwise be what others have been doing. It's just what we intend to do, and we'll see how it works. So there you go.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you very much. Juan O Savin, you've heard it here. 3-hour episode and worth every minute of it. Share it far and wide, folks. We need to be informed, empowered, and connected, and that's my objective. Seeking the truth, with resources such as Juan O Savin and others. Thank you very much, Juan. It was great seeing you in Bangkok. Next time you're in my neck of the woods, let me know. I'll hop a flight wherever you are, and look forward to breaking bread with you once again. My best to your beautiful wife, Jennifer Mack, and thank you, sir. God bless you.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Join JMC Broadcasting's monthly Global Defense War Military Panel. JMC hosts an esteemed panel of military experts, including Ricardo Bosi, Tom Lennox, Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, Derek Johnson, Brad Wozni, and other military guests. Join us each month, where this panel of esteemed guests analyze the current events across a broad spectrum of topics, addressing the questions and concerns that you have. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Global Defense War Military Panel broadcast, right here on jmcbroadcasting.com.